$200 million at the box office, and the cast saw almost none of it. Pocket change salaries, a cocaine wreck, a 12-year-old addict nobody caught, a carpenter who became the biggest movie star on the planet. 50 years later, the full truth of what happened to these actors is uglier, sadder, and more extraordinary than anything that ever made it onto the screen. Richard Dreyfuss as Kurt Henderson.
Where is the dazzling beauty I've been searching for all my life?
He walked into his audition and did something almost no actor dares to do. He told George Lucas exactly what was wrong with the script. Not nervously, not carefully, flat out and confidently. Lucas was so stunned by his boldness that he handed Richard something almost unheard of, the freedom to choose whichever role he wanted.
George actually gave me a choice of roles. He said you could play either my character or the character that Ronnie Howard played.
Richard picked Kurt Henderson, the young intellectual torn between staying home and escaping everything familiar, and became the moral conscience of the entire film.
Cut over to G Street. I just saw a vision. I saw a goddess.
Born in Brooklyn, New York on October 29, 1947, he was just 24 years old and completely unknown when he made that choice. What followed was one of the fastest rises in Hollywood history. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, then the Best Actor Oscar for The Goodbye Girl in 1977. At 30 years old, the youngest winner in Academy history at that time. Then, The Darkness arrived. A severe cocaine addiction consumed the early 1980s and exploded into a 1982 car crash that nearly killed him when he drove straight into a tree at full speed. That wreck became his rock bottom. A bipolar disorder diagnosis followed years later, and Richard transformed all of that pain into becoming one of Hollywood's most fearless mental health advocates. 3 marriages, 3 children. As of 2026, Richard Dreyfuss is 78 years old and still standing. Cindy Williams, Laurie Henderson.
After all that stuff you told me about watching your brother.
You're disgusting! Get out of my car! Get out! Lori, I told you never to mention—
The moment she read opposite Ron Howard in that audition room, something clicked that no casting director can manufacture or force into existence. Pure, immediate, completely undeniable chemistry.
I screen tested with Ron Howard, and I think we did the dance scene.
What is wrong with you? You're acting like a snotty little bitch who wants everybody to...
What did you call me?
George Lucas recognized it within seconds and built the entire emotional center of his film around it. Born in Van Nuys, California on August 22, 1947, Cindy Williams was 25 years old when she walked into that room and walked out carrying the beating heart of American Graffiti entirely on her shoulder. After the film, she landed the role that would define a full decade of American television. Shirley Feeney opposite Penny Marshall in Laverne and Shirley, one of the most watched sitcoms of the entire 1970s, running for 8 complete seasons. Off-screen, she married musician Bill Hudson in 1977. That marriage collapsed by 1982. In her final years, she focused on writing her memoirs and slowly rebuilding her relationship with her children. On January 25, 2023, Cindy Williams passed away after a brief illness at 75 years old. The emotional anchor of that entire cast slipped away far too quietly and far too soon. Candy Clark as Debbie Dunham. Picture walking into a massive cattle call audition with exactly 1 film credit, 0 industry connections, and no reason whatsoever for anyone to remember your name.
I had heard that they were going to film this film, American Graffiti, and it took place in the 50s, so I thought, this time I'm gonna dress up and I'm gonna go in costume and they're gonna see me and they're gonna think I'm perfect for the part.
And then walking out as the only person in that entire young cast who would receive an Academy Award nomination. That is precisely what happened to Candy Clark. Born in Norman, Oklahoma on June 20th, 1947, she was 25 years old and completely unknown when George Lucas cast her as the free-spirited, effortlessly bubbly Debbie Dunham. She poured everything she had into that role across 28 brutal consecutive night shoots.
How am I gonna get home?
Then comes the part that should genuinely make your blood boil. Candy was paid somewhere between $300 and $400 per week, a grand total under $5,000, for a film that eventually grossed over $200 million worldwide. 0 residuals, 0 profit participation, not 1 extra cent when the money started flooding in. She returned for the 1979 sequel, appeared in films including The Man Who Fell to Earth and smartly built herself a completely independent real estate and limousine business that owed Hollywood absolutely nothing. As of 2026, Candy Clark is 78 years old, very much alive, and it turns out the so-called ditzy blonde was operating at a level the industry never fully deserved. Paul Le Mat as John Milner.
Is this what they call copying a field?
What? No, get up! Oh my God, don't say that!
He played the aging drag racing king, slowly realizing his glory days were already behind him, and there was nothing manufactured about that feeling. Paul Le Mat was a Vietnam veteran and trained stage actor who brought genuine lived-in weight to John Milner.
He said, well, this is George. He's making this movie, and it's about hot rods and things, and there's a role for you in it.
That no amount of acting technique alone could have produced. Born in Rahway, New Jersey on September 22, 1945, he was 26 years old when Lucas cast him, and that combination of military experience and theatrical discipline gave Milner the quietly tragic authenticity that made him the soul of the entire film rather than just its coolest face. The most notorious off-camera moment of the entire production involved Paul directly. One night he threw co-star Richard Dreyfuss into a hotel swimming pool as a joke, and Dreyfuss gashed his forehead badly on the pool edge.
He didn't joke around with Richard Dreyfuss. He was very serious. I grabbed him and said, do you want to try it? And he said, no, and I threw him in the pool.
So that I got a big, thing on my forehead.
Makeup artists spent the following morning covering the wound before his close-up scenes. Harrison Ford was reportedly part of the same horseplay and got himself thrown out of the cast motel entirely as a result. Paul also suffered a serious allergic reaction during the shoot itself. He earned a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination for Melvin and Howard in 1980 and returned for the 1979 sequel. As of 2026, Paul Le Mat is around 80 years old, alive, and living quietly away from any spotlight. Ron Howard as Steve Bolander. Born in Duncan, Oklahoma on March 1, 1954, Ron Howard arrived on the American Graffiti set at 18 years old as a genuine household name, and he almost never showed up at all. He was already the most famous face on that entire set before a single camera rolled. America had literally watched this man grow up on their television screens as little Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. When his agent described the project, Ron became completely convinced it was a musical, a genre he wanted absolutely nothing to do with, and nearly passed on it entirely.
My agent told me it's a musical. He said, well, it is a musical. I said, well, I can't sing. He said, it doesn't matter that you can't sing. You're acting like a snotty little bitch who wants everybody to...
What did you call me?
He was paid $6,500 for the complete shoot. No profit sharing. Not a single dollar of participation in a film that crossed $200 million at the worldwide box office. What happened next is what separates Ron Howard from almost every other actor of his generation. He used the graffiti momentum to land Happy Days, then made the most decisive pivot of his career, stepping fully and permanently behind the camera. Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, which delivered him the Best Director Oscar in 2002. Decades of critically celebrated work that nobody standing on that low-budget Modesto set could have imagined. Married to Cheryl Howard since 1975, 4 children including actress Bryce Dallas Howard. As of 2026, Ron Howard is 72 years old, alive, and worth approximately $200 million. Mackenzie Phillips. As Carol A., casting director, spotted her hitchhiking alone on the side of the road. She was 12 years old. They brought her in, she read for the part, and she got it.
Fred Roos came up to me and he said, how'd you like to be in a movie? And I said, wow, that would be really cool, okay?
Because she was legally a minor, the production was required to assign her an official on-set guardian at all times. What that guardian and every single person on that crew did not know was something that should genuinely stop you cold. By the time cameras began rolling on American Graffiti, Mackenzie Phillips had already been using drugs for over a year. She was 11 years old when she started. Born in Alexandria, Virginia on November 10, 1959, she was the daughter of John Phillips. She landed one day at a time after Graffiti and briefly became a teen television star. Then the addiction tightened its grip and cost her job after job after job. Then in 2009, she published a memoir containing one of the most devastating personal allegations Hollywood had ever been forced to confront, claiming her own father had abused her for years. She has rebuilt herself from the ground up, stayed sober, and found solid footing. 3 marriages, 1 daughter, As of 2026, Mackenzie Phillips is 66 years old and finally free. Charles Martin Smith as Terry the Toad Fields, the awkward scooter-riding nerd who somehow convinces the most beautiful girl in town to spend an entire magical night with him.
Hi. Hello. Buenos noches. You need a lift somewhere?
So I did a cold reading. Stone cold. I hadn't seen the script, nothing.
That was Terry the Toad, and 18-year-old Charles Martin Smith played every fumbling, lovable, heartbreaking beat of it with complete perfection. Born in Van Nuys, California on October 30th, 1953, he became the comic and emotional backbone of American Graffiti, his bumbling chemistry with Candy Clark producing the film's most genuinely bittersweet storyline. He returned for the 1979 sequel and made the Toad the only character whose ultimate fate carried devastating emotional weight across both films. But here is what almost nobody in any conversation about this cast ever mentions. Charles Martin Smith quietly constructed one of the most surprising and genuinely impressive second acts of anyone in this entire lineup. He headlined the cult classic Never Cry Wolf in 1983 and earned serious dramatic credibility far beyond his Toad reputation. Then he moved deliberately and permanently behind the camera, directing Air Bud, Dolphin Tale, and dozens of television episodes spanning multiple decades. More than 50 years of continuous, committed work in an industry that destroys most careers within 5. As of 2026, Charles Martin Smith is 72 years old, alive, working, and has spent his entire life proving the Toad was never the loser that nickname implied.